Okay, so to begin, let's talk about what do you guys want to talk about as far as meditation? And I'll kind of write that stuff down. So, well, why would you come to learn meditation? Who's meditated before? Okay. Who meditates regularly? Okay, great. And you want to tell us what you do to meditate? What's the practice that you do? Anyone? No? Secret meditators? Okay.
I try to just breathe, and I usually get caught up with thoughts, and so I try to breathe through them, but a lot of times my mind will wander, or have a hard time coming back.
Okay. So breathing based on the breath. Okay. What about anybody else? What other technique? Yeah.
I started off meditating using Insight Timer. That was helpful to me. I really like that app.
Mm-hmm.
There's guided meditations, or you can do your own time yourself. So.
Yeah, right. There's a lot of different ways we can meditate, right? So, right, the Insight Timer is a good way to keep track of your meditation. You know, I usually use the timer in my cell phone and that kind of thing. But let's list a few of them, because you said breath. We can meditate based on the breath. There's moving meditations. What else?
I go to a group once a week that I seem to do good in that, but by myself I can't get a routine. But I'd like to use it to kind of like when I can't sleep, like something's tomorrow. I say I'm playing guitar somewhere, and I'm like, so I'd like to be able to use it as a technique to calm my mind when I need to.
Is that how anybody else's list is calming the mind? Right, it's kind of a universal need and universal thing. Let me go into before I go more into this part, let me go into my background with this and stuff. I probably started meditating in about 2005, and actually really, I worked for Deepak Chopra for a long time. Are you guys familiar with him at all? So before that, I was really influenced by Eckhart Tolle, and I used to come to this gym actually back then, and I would swim way too much in the pool. I was very out of balance in my life, and I was an insomniac. I'd wait till the pool would open at 4:30 in the morning, and I'd come and I'd swim a mile and a half. And I was a 23-year-old kid. I was kind of depressed and angry and had all these life problems. And I heard Eckhart Tolle, and that stuff blew me away. I was just oh, that's insane. I can't believe how my mind has been and everything like that. I didn't have any tools around that. And so I guess, how the universe works is just I started listening to that. I got healthier. I started looking into other Hay House and Sounds True recordings and stuff. And somehow I winded up in San Diego, and I didn't really have a job yet. So the Chopra Center for Wellbeing was in the area, and I started working for Deepak Chopra, just as a volunteer, trying to learn about that a little bit. And I was really amazed at them because they had well, first of all, it's not just Deepak. Most people think Deepak is Deepak, but there's also Dr. David Simon. And I should really give a lot of credit to him because in a lot of ways he did a lot to change my life. There's a lot of teachings that I absorbed from him. So that's one thing if you guys want to write down, just look him up. Dr. David Simon has an incredible mind, a very brilliant man, and he's really actually Deepak's other half that really created the Chopra Center, at least as much as Deepak did. He was there every day, and tragically, after I was there for about 3 years, volunteering and doing different things, he died of a brain tumor, almost like a thief in the night. He was there for about 8 months, going downhill, and he was gone. But he died how he lived, and he was always telling us, life is short, enjoy your life, and make the most of it. And some of these ideas around meditation really let us reorganize our mind, reformat ourselves, go beyond our limiting beliefs and everything like that. And our conditioning process is really what that does. And really, Deepak and David Simon were students of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who started transcendental meditation and brought that to the West. And there was always this goal, this agenda with that, to create a situation of critical mass of consciousness, because we knew that elevating the consciousness in this way had an indirect effect on everybody in this. And so that's one of the ideas about critical mass. You know, there's these consciousness grids, you could say, and as we raise the consciousness like that, this innate learning happens in other people where they can more easily be the witness of themselves. Mindfulness is, you know, an easier thing to kind of grapple with and that sort of thing, you know. So, so we'll learn, we can look at a lot of different types of meditation, but what's the definition of meditation if there's a lot of different ones? Does anybody? Yeah, like what do they all have in common? What would you say?
Stillness.
Stillness, okay.
Going inward.
Going inward? Yeah.
Not stopping the mind,
Stopping the mind. And
thoughts, stopping thoughts.
stopping thoughts, yeah, and that's one of the biggest things I want to drive home is because that's one of the biggest notions about it. I'll give you an idea, I think a definition that works for it is this, is that it's anything that creates this one point in focus. And even we want to be kind of careful with the word focus, because if you're focusing while you're meditating, it kind of keeps you on this constricted level. You know, it's actually not about stopping the mind, to be honest with you. And because a lot of people think it's about clearing the mind. But it's not, because you won't be able to do that. I can guarantee you, as you try to sit there, and you have glimpses like that, but you'll set yourself up better to have this orientation, is if you consider that it's going to be a drift between thought and what I'll teach us today is a mantra meditation. So mantra, if we look at it, so mantra is a word that gets kind of misused sometimes. The idea of a mantra is actually a vibration, and it's actually two words together. It's man and tra, and man is mind, and tra is like the word for transport or for movement, so it's like a vehicle. So this is either like a tool of the mind or a vehicle of the mind. And what we do is we use it to transcend the intellect, through the intellect, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but I'll show you how that works. It's kind of an unusual idea, certainly. But basically, a lot of things come from this tra, like train, transport, transform. This prefix gets used a lot in our language. So this vehicle of the mind, or instrument of the mind, is what we use to meditate. And let me explain how that works. So really, the mantra is not a word. And I remember David Simon telling us early on that, when he's like in medical school and the doctors were talking, they'd say like, do you really think that saying a word over and over in your head is going to help you? Is that going to change your health? Is that going to do anything for your state of being? That seems crazy to say a word over and over, like maybe an affirmation or something. But let's be clear that the mantra is not a word. And that's the magic. That's the entire mechanism behind the meditation, is that the mantra isn't the word, and it can't be made into a word. And that's the actual mechanism of meditating with it. If I give you an example, if we put so hum on the board, so hum, okay. It's not really a word exactly, but it has a vibration. And in the mind, we experience the mind as something we hear, basically, wouldn't you say? Kind of opposed to anything else. We can hear it. It's a very subtle, audible thing, but it's a vibration in a sense that we can actually hear the mind. And if we use something in place of thought, it doesn't have karma attached to it. So, because we have all this associative mind, and from the moment that we're born, the conditioning process starts. There's this other thing I'll show you. So there's a wheel of karma, or you could call it the software of the soul, and that is these things here. What we have is action, and then we have memory, and then we have desire. Okay? And so what happens is something happens and we experience an action, something, and that creates a memory in us based on that That's supposed to be an arrow. And then that has a desire, either for something or for less of something. And that's our conditioning process. And it happens even before we think, because there's no words, right? When we're newborn and we're an infant, but still, like, if a toddler, or not that, like an infant puts something in their mouth, or you feed them something they don't like, it can make the expression like they don't like the flavor, they don't like the taste of it, you know what I mean? So they're learning through memory what they do and they don't like very early. We all do. And this is like a set pattern. This is our conditioning process. It creates these knee-jerk responses inside of us where we react to all kinds of phenomena in the world. And basically what we have, in the adult world is a lot of opportunities for fight or flight response, A person has between 60 and 80,000 thoughts a day, that's what our studies have said. And that's a lot of thoughts, And the fight or flight response gets triggered somewhere, these can be like low grade, it's not necessarily like a really, major thing, but between 12 and 14 times a day. And stress is the kind of the main thing that we find leads to the onset of so many degenerative diseases, because if we have these elevated biomarkers, then inevitably we're going to, if those stay like elevated too long, if your blood platelets are sticky all the time, because in fight or flight, if you get cut, you need your blood to clot, so your blood platelets get sticky even before you're cut. That kind of thing. If that happens, well, then we can get coronary artery disease, right? All these different things. If they stay elevated in fight or flight, it can damage us. And then what happens is we have fight or flight. And I know it's a newer thing to say fight, flight, or freeze, so I'll put that too. Because some people's stress response is not so much to run or to fight against something, it can just be to freeze, you kind of be paralyzed. Some people told me it's also fawn. Some people will fawn. I'm like, okay, I don't know. I haven't heard that used as much, but at least fight or flight we for sure subscribe to, and freeze, well, I've seen that happens with certain mind body types and stuff too.
What was the other one?
Fawn, yeah. So I guess it's more like a Stockholm syndrome kind of a thing where you agree to kind of be more placating or something like that. But, so that's our most primitive biological response, we've had that for ages. And then the slight upgrade from the fight or flight response is the, what would you call it, the reactive response. It's kind of like the slightly more grown up version, where it's our actual physical survival isn't threatened, but our sense of self is, that who we think we are to ourselves can be threatened. Some people will be, different, snarky or something, or put up self-defense as walls go up. That's not really, your actual survival isn't threatened, but the idea of who you are, the mind can be taken away from, or attitude, more or less, So those are our two, I didn't write that one, but it's a reactive response. Those are our two first responses, to external stimuli. And then through meditation, though, we trigger something. We come into what we call restful awareness. And so this is a new response to external stimuli. And what happens with that is that things don't need to change. It's like a weird epiphany, and I'll tell you a little story about that, because I hear about this with Deepak, like all this stuff, as I was working at the Trevor Center for a lot of years. And I was teaching meditation there, and one day, I'm guiding the group into meditation. And then I'm just about to go into silence, saying the last kind of things to lead it in. And somebody opens the door to the meditation room, and I kind of just thought it was like somebody, just late to the meditation. I'm like, well, they just got here just in the nick of time, but instead I get a little tap on the shoulder. And then I look up, and it's one of the doctors from upstairs, because we do these medical consultations for people. And she's like, I need to talk to you outside real quick. And I'm like, okay. Well, I was like, she's like, I'll finish your meditation with everybody, but you just come talk to me. She's like, I'm like, okay. And she's like, do you have like an 80s BMW out there in the parking lot? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, look, somebody from La Costa, which is the resort where we were, just called and said that I guess your car rolled backward through the parking lot, and and it knocked out a fire hydrant, and like it was just like water spraying everywhere, and the police and the fire department's all out there, and they can't get your car off the fire hydrant to do anything about it. So do you think you could go out there and like give them your keys and help me get the car off the thing? I'm like, yeah, you bet I will, right? So I run. It was weird epiphany, two things happening at once. Because on one hand, I was getting ready to go into a restful awareness state, take my biomarkers in this direction, and then I suddenly have this other thing go on where like I'm just like it's urgent, and my sense of self, I'm like my car, oh man, what, and like Lacoste's fire hydrant, what's gonna happen with that? I'm like, oh great, and like all the employees, not just the employees of the Joker Center, like all around the campus, everybody knows that this car took this fire hydrant out, and they all knew it was me because I had like one of my pay stubs was sitting in the back seat, and that's how they figured out who it was in the back. It said my last name like through the little window envelope, and so I'm running out there, I'm running through the halls, I'm making sure my keys are in my pocket, I'm getting ready to get out there and handle it. And then as I'm running through the halls of this weird thing, it happened at the same time, was that it was kind of odd, just for no real good reason that was going to make any difference. However I got about it wouldn't really matter, and so just even though I was running, nothing really changed. And I knew that when I get out there, everything would kind of handle itself. And I get out to my car, and all the firemen and the police kind of turn, they can see a guy coming toward the car. And they kind of tell, they're kind of relieved. I was like, yeah, you're crazy about it or upset, really. I just walked over and handled it, needed my keys and got it off of there. But I'll tell you, there's really no good words to put it into that this works, because this fight or flight response and that stuff, it wouldn't be your personal choice when it changes you, because this isn't a personal transformation. The idea with meditation is that the ego box that we become through this conditioning process here, it's really just a very small picture of the universality behind it. So if we kind of start to do this thing, which is called glimpsing the soul, it kind of mitigates that stress response. So it does all this good stuff. I'll flip this thing over. So I'll show you a diagram for that. So most people have 3 states of consciousness. Do you know? Would you guess what those are? And we oscillate between them every 24 hours.
Sleep.
Sleep is one of them. Yeah. So sleep.
Has to be awake.
Wake. Dreaming. That's the other. Those are the 3. And that's most people's lives. It's the oscillation between these 3 things. Like every 24 hours, you're going back and forth through that, right? That's the whole conditioning. All the karmas that play out on the earth here, right? It's really from that, all the mind and everything, and all the influences and the ideas, beliefs and agreements, disagreements, everything, it's flowing in and out of these 3 states, But through meditation, and here's what I'll try. I've been trying to think of a good diagram for a while to kind of like illustrate this idea, but basically I've done a practice slightly, and it would be this, okay? It's a very crude representation of an eyeball. And if you notice, with meditation, because our attention's usually outwards, but there's attention like an arrow, moves out that way, out of the eye, or whatever. But it's, for awareness, for anything to be, like for us to be here, for there to be a reality, there has to be a consciousness behind it, right? Like, you wouldn't be having a dream if there wasn't a dreamer of the dream. You must have some central core awareness there. So it's usually like behind here, not really developed, but it's not that developed, but because you have all of our attention out here on external stuff, whatever that stuff is, external objects, anything that has a form to it, whether even an idea is a thought form. So this, your attention is out this way, but when you introduce the mantra, because when we meditate, we try to, I won't say block out, I just like to say we do what we can to limit the outside exposure to the influences, whether that's extra noises, when we meditate here, I'll turn the lights down, right? That's all just to eliminate external stimuli, basically. So when we shut our eyes and we're trying not to have thoughts, instead we're saying the mantra, something happens because we're not having thoughts. We're repeating a mantra, and what happens is this attention that goes out also comes back in, and it realizes that there's something there that's actually watching, and it blooms this witnessing awareness, and really as it realizes itself here, it realizes that there's something behind the attention must have an attendee. You're the attendee at the core of that. And so when you look into that, and there's this still ever-present witness that's not making itself into anything, you realize the consciousness behind it. And that same consciousness realizes that it's watching where attention goes. And that's kind of the mechanism of meditation, is that you bloom what's called second attention. Just by saying this vibration over and over that doesn't mean anything. So it can't lead to another thought. Now, so let's do this as a fun exercise. I've never told this to groups, but I've done it with a lot of people privately. Is like when I was taught Chopra's style of meditation, it's primordial sound meditation, and I need people's birth information, and then you tell me where you were born, what city, what time of day, and all that, and then I'm going to research that on a computer program, and I'm going to figure out the exact universal vibration that was present on a subtle level when you were born. That's how that system works. But what would happen is, not everybody wanted to do the whole course, or I'd meet people randomly, and I didn't want to not be able to spread meditation. And I developed a way. I'm like, okay, I'm going to make my own mantras. Some people will tell you whoa, yoga purists, you're making counterfeit mantras. But I'm like, no, I'm not claiming to do anything other than what you're going to see us do here. So I'm going to show you what I would do for that. So, okay, there are vowels and there are consonants, right, in our language. Okay, give me the first consonant that comes to you.
B.
B, okay. B. Give me the next consonant. Anybody? C, okay. Okay, give me one more consonant.
H.
H, okay. B, C, H. Okay, give me the first vowel.
A.
A. Give me another vowel.
Oh,
O. Okay. Give me one more vowel.
U.
U, okay. Alright. Back. Bakochu? Does that mean anything to anybody here? No, Bakochu doesn't mean anything. And sometimes some people go, I don't know, I go, do you like it? Do you like that mantra? Does it sound good? And they go, I don't know. I'm like, okay, let's do it this way. Uhokab, do it the other direction. Do you like that better? And then sometimes they're like, yeah, no, I like the coaching better. Or I do it the other way. And they're like, I don't really like either of them. I'm like, okay, let's do it this way. Aboku, would you, I'll just put the A, I'll put the vowels first. Aboku, do you like that one better? And then we figured it out. And if they didn't like it, I'm like, well, we'll pick new letters. It doesn't really matter. So what happens is you've got this vibration. It's not a word. And that's what's going to be all the liberation in your life, And so with Chopra's style of meditation, what we would do, my mantra, there's a seed sound in the middle called a bija, and this bija that's the specific vibration, and we're not supposed to share it, and so I use it every day, a couple times a day. I won't share it with my bija sound or whatever, because that's supposed to be kept and sanctified just for that, But I'm making this here, so we can all have a collective mantra. When we meditate today, you could use this, or you could use so either one. But our mantras look like this. They start with Om, then they have that middle part, and then they end in Na, Ma, Ha. And so, as I said, yeah.
Is it always the same, the mantra? What you're using is always the same word, the same thought?
You mean as when I do it myself?
Or just in general?
So that's a good question, because so in the greater thing of yogic thought, I'm going to explain the whole yogic conversation as I know it and understand it too, because what I'm doing here isn't necessarily agreed with, and I'll explain that to make sure people understand. I know both sides of that conversation, but I always use the same mantra, and for practical reasons, I recommend that everybody does, because it has an accumulative benefit, it's kind of like a Pavlovian thing. You do the same process, it'll take you to the same place. And what is the goal of the mantra? It's always to transcend the intellect. through the intellect, okay? So we repeat, I use the same mantra I have for 15 years, but not all people do that. Some yoga people say, they're like, well, first of all, you're saying mantras don't have a meaning. And they're like, oh, that's not true. There's a lot of different yogic mantras for different purposes, different intentions. There has been for thousands of years, actually. And I say, well, that intention isn't actually the meaning of the mantra. When we use this, it's being used for its vibrational quality, and that's why it doesn't lead to another thought. It can be likened to hold certain specific intentions or invoke certain, you could say, universal powers or something like that, have certain intentions associated with it. But that comes after the use of it as simply a vibration on the level of the mind, on the level of thought, So, I always use the same one. I've known some yogis who use different ones for certain things at times, like that, We were taught when I did primordial sound meditation, we were taught a second mantra, which was Om Agasti Shahina. And the reason for that, I'll tell you the whole thing, it's not like a special seed vibration from anybody's birth. Om Agasti Shahina was to be used for sleep, when you have insomnia. Because we wanted to at least have one different mantra, because we don't want the mantra to get this Pavlovian association where it brings you to sleep. So one of our main recommendations is, you want to be comfortable when you meditate, but you don't want to lie down. Some people get too borderline with it. They're like, no, I like to get into my recliner and I bundle up. And I'm like, that's going to be a very slippery slope, because it's very easy to fall asleep when you do that. And with this, there's the notion of either rising above the level of conscious thought or sinking below the level of conscious thought. Sleep is certainly sinking below the level of conscious thought, but a lot of things that we use for relief and reprieve in our society, they are used to help us kind of regroup our energies and stuff. When you kick off your shoes and watch TV, you get home. TV helps you slip below the level of conscious thought. You don't really have to have ideas or anything, but you're not really asleep yet, so it's kind of rejuvenating, but it's not even as rejuvenating as going above the level of conscious thought and then having that occur, a certain level of rejuvenation that only happens through moving out of that state of mind. Okay? So I always use the same mantra, but people usually want to know why these vibrations. And Om Om is known to be all vibrations. It's said that Om is essentially the sound of all vibrations together, every other vibration. It's like the white light, the prism, like the white light of all vibrations is Om. And then that middle one I said is it's the bija, it's the seed sound. This is the mantra part that is specific to ourselves. And then Namaha is the self, reflecting back on the self. So, or you could say the universe, the self, the wheel. This is really what but again, it doesn't mean anything. That won't matter when we're meditating with it, but it is likened to, there's reasons that it is those vibrations, okay? So, is there any questions about any of that part so far? Okay, cool. So let me see how we're doing on time with that kind of thing. So, let's see, I'm trying to think if there's anything specific more that I wanted to mention about that. So with this dreaming, waking, and sleeping, what happens is that, through this mechanism here, we start to watch ourselves, not just as the first person, always playing this first person role, and we start to become the third person too at the same time. So, not as in like an identity split, but as a passing, going beyond, transcending just the limitations of the identifying with a thought, and there's the ahankara, the I former in yogic philosophy, which is this, the level of ownership in the mind is seated very deeply, but it claims kind of all of our forces through this idea of I, me, and mine. We talk to ourselves in terms of I, me, and mine. And ownership happens through what we were told is 3 P's. You have people, possessions, and positions. So you'd say my job, my car, my family, those are my people, whatever it is, any of that stuff. And those things keep that spell of ownership so conscious in the mind that everything is, my opinion or whatever, all these different things like that. But there's a lot of shift away from I, me, mine to the, and that which is, like life isn't really claimed by that so much anymore. So that's kind of some of the stuff that goes on with that. More to say, I guess we can start with our mantra try if you want to. We'll do it for about 10 minutes or